Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Beers Beyond Borders International Education Symposium webinar series hosted by Morgan State University, a public research university located in Baltimore, Maryland. And this year, entire symposium is online because of COVID-19 global crisis. We scheduled 4 sessions yesterday and today, and this is the last session of our symposium. My name is Krishna Bista, Associate Professor of Higher Education at Morgan State, and I'm your moderator for this afternoon. And I see now 50 plus guests joining us, listening all over the world for this symposium. Thank you for listening to us. And we really appreciate for your presence. So now we have 4 panelists. And thank you for accepting our invitation to speak for this afternoon. We have professors and practitioners who have years of experience in higher education, and you will hear from them. Let me read their bios. You can see the Professor Akomolafe from Norfolk State University, HBCUs. He has years of experience in international education, international relations, and politics and foreign policy, very well known in the field and has published several articles. Then we have the second speaker, Professor Felecia Williams, and she is both researchers and administrator, and has been outstanding experience in the field from the University College at Virginia Commonwealth University. And she has also done a wonderful research on international aspect, looking into internationalization initiative at HBCUs. And also we have Neupane. She has done, years of research looking into networking and internationalization in higher education. Currently, she's a program director at Yale University, Connecticut. And final, the professor of English, and he's a founding director of the Center for International Studies at Virginia Union University, another HBCU. He's also former dean of the School of Education, Psychology, and Interdisciplinary Studies. So thank you, our panelists, for being with us this afternoon and sharing your expertise. So without further ado, I'd like to request my first panelist, Professor Felecia Williams, joining us from Virginia Commonwealth University, and she's focusing on internationalization initiative at historical Black colleges and universities. Professor Williams, floor is yours.
Thank you so very much. I first want to thank you, Dr. Bista, for the invitation, and I also would like to thank my fellow panelists. It's good to see my former co-worker, Dr. David Adewuyi. Good to see you. Okay. A little bit about some research that I actually delved into. There's a disparity in the participation of underrepresented students in study abroad programs enrolled in colleges and universities across the United States. Since the importance of study abroad experience is to broaden the overall higher education process, any class or group of students who does not participate in a study abroad program is not fully engaging in the higher education process, and perhaps may be denied the full value of a college experience. In addition to the influence that international learning has on a well-conceived education, international education is increasingly important in the economic sector, and it has an impact on career development. One of the reasons students pursue higher education is to have higher incomes and a better quality of life. If we look at incomes for racial ethnic groups in the United States, then the 2 largest minority groups, Black or African Americans and Hispanics, the median income is much lower than it is for the non-minority. So there are numerous factors, including level of education, the number of minority students actually graduating from college that may account for some of the difference in income. But educators involved in study abroad actually believe that having a study abroad experience helps students get a job after graduation. However, the lack of minority students participating in study abroad programs represents limited access to the full range of education and career opportunities. And it is an area of concern, even if it occurs unintentionally. The following groups have been identified as underrepresented in study abroad programs: ethnic and racial minorities, students with disabilities, students from HBCUs, just to name a few. The American Council on Education reports that there's roughly a little more than a third of all undergraduates in the United States are students of color, yet minorities account for less than 17% of the United States study abroad population. So if it's not practical for all students to participate in a study abroad program, then it is desirable, at least desirable, for the opportunities to be distributed equitably. Students from all backgrounds should have the same opportunities to reap the benefits of a study abroad program. It's commendable that the number of study abroad participants overall is increasing, but we must be concerned that the underrepresented racial minorities are not realizing the benefits of participating in a study abroad program. So I took a look at sort of some of the reasons that you find in the literature, but I looked at it I looked at the reasons perhaps for minority students overall not participating in study abroad, but I looked at it at the institutional level. I investigated some variables at the institutional level. And so I took a look at whether the proportion of all students studying abroad is influenced by endowment, percent of university students receiving financial aid, the university's commitment to internationalization and study abroad, the SAT/ACT scores as a proxy for achievement, and the proportion of staff actually devoted to study abroad programs. And the results of the study, basically one of the most glaring results is that the proportion of staff was highly significant to as a predictor of how many students would study abroad. And so that in and of itself, I think alludes to the fact that if we can get commitment from administration, higher administration, all powers to be, to actually commit to staff to help facilitate study abroad. And so, as I mentioned prior, that there are numerous underrepresented groups, but my focus has been on racial and ethnic minorities. And so I will stop there. I have lots more data, so I'm looking forward to actually answering the questions. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Williams, for your perspective and insights with the focus on study abroad and the priorities and the access and inequalities that we see among our minority and underrepresented students. Yes, that's a great point. Thank you. We appreciate your insight and perspective. We'll be taking questions from our panelists, the guest, participant, those who are listening us. Please continue sending your questions using Q&As. So with that, now I'd like to move to next speaker. We have Asia Neupane from Yale University, and she's focusing on the importance of networking in internationalization of higher education. Dr. Neupane?
Great, yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, really, thank you for this opportunity to present with my fellow panelists here on internationalization. I'll do my best to keep to my time allotment. So I may not say everything that's part of my slides, but we can, refer back to them or further discuss as part of a Q&A session as well. So first slide, I guess, Dr. Bista. Thank you. So I'm speaking about internationalization and networks more broadly for all higher education institutions context. Obviously, as we all know, internationalization in higher ed is of growing importance. It encompasses a myriad of initiatives like student exchanges and study abroad programs like Dr. Williams just described here, and various other programs and activities. I think to keep to my time, I'll keep going. This is just an intro here. So next slide, please, Dr. Bista. Great, thanks. So in terms of just what I mean by internationalization and network, because my presentation here is focused around network specifically, it's always helpful to define terms. So I thought it would be really helpful to include these two terms as part of the talk. In terms of internationalization, I really like Jane Knight's comprehensive definition of what it means. It emphasizes the process of integration of international activities to the purpose and delivery. The definition with the really, it's gotten really good terms like process and integration and international, intercultural. Each of these words adds to the holistic nature of internationalization. It's an ongoing effort, and the three dimensions that she describes, international, intercultural, global, they all emphasize the interactions between countries and cultures. And something I also really like about the definition is it incorporates how it needs to be a part of an institution's mission, the purpose, and what the institution can offer in terms of delivery. And then the definition of network is defined by Chapman. I list these two references at the end of my slides in case anyone's interested in actually taking a look at the literature. It's the one that I think of in terms of what is a network in this context. The main idea being, focused around broad set of activities with an issue or a goal. Next slide. Thank you. So here I'm really linking what these two terms mean, and these two points here are the two primary ideas, and thinking about how internationalization functions and how networks are a part of it. Historically, internationalization frameworks have progressed to a growing emphasis on institutions to being a part of a network. The first idea here is really about how internationalization occurs at all levels, and how one needs to take a holistic overview, just as I described from Jane Knight's definition, at all of these levels. So really, what does it mean in practice? In practice, it's clear that internationalization is thought about differently at different levels. For example, previous studies and my own experience working in higher ed, working with senior university leadership, and I'm sure many of my panelists here, we know that at the senior levels, internationalization is really thought of in terms of big picture things like how institutional collaborations and prestige and global challenges, like how is the current pandemic going to affect research funds, faculty, and student collaborations. And then at the operational middle management levels, it's really more about the benchmarking measures. How's the current pandemic affecting other institutions? What are they doing in terms of canceling events, canceling student travel, and so forth? And so the second idea is essentially my argument that using networks is effective in amplifying internationalization strategy as related to all the levels. And I'll discuss this further from my own research, as well as my experience working in higher ed. Great, thank you. So as I mentioned, I believe in the power of networks and the effectiveness of networks. Here there are three ideas that I've learned from my research experience for how institutions can use a network effectively and for their own goals. One, prioritize at the various levels. Two, adapt to network challenges. And the last one being think about partnerships beyond the network. Next slide. Great, thank you. So here I'll just delve a little bit into it, what I mean in terms of these three ideas here. With respect to prioritizing the network, there's really a two-tiered approach at the leadership and operational levels. So I mentioned this already and how the senior leadership thinks about it in terms of the broader context of global issues such as the pandemic and challenges. The prioritization really only works if the leaders are involved in various meetings. They're actually involved in starting up broader initiatives and programming ideas. And then the operational level, the thinking is around metrics and benchmarking. And I've learned that the best way to actually work on these would be through committees. The committees are really good at actually producing the activities and the implementation part of the big picture of things that the senior leadership is thinking about. And then the second idea here under the prioritizing the network is refers to how the institutions need to address and adapt to challenges that will undoubtedly come with being a part of any network. The primary challenges are around vision uncertainty, communication, and differences in systems and cultures. The expectations about how institutions contribute to the network all need to be understood by all of the institutions or before an institution actually joins. And then communication from the network and within the institution between all the levels of senior leadership, operational leadership, middle management, and so forth is also really important. And then lastly, the institutions need to be aware of how there are differences in systems and cultures, especially for institutions in other cultures, in other countries, excuse me. And then there should be a broader understanding of how, there could be lopsided contributions to the network, depending on how the network is prioritized by each institution. And really, this is okay as long as the institutions are being very strategic about their own relationship and contributions. And then the last idea under prioritizing the network is really around furthering impact and leveraging partnerships beyond the network here. So if an institution has set itself up to be smart in its approach and its goals, then it can be nimble in thinking about how they can increase collaborations with other institutions in the network. And this relates to the, actually the very last point here on the slide, the developing informal and personal connections, where trust really comes into play. It's a key factor in how collaborations and work can be done effectively. And it's really only done because of the strong connections between people. And this happens at all levels of the institutions. Next slide. Thank you. So the three ideas that I described could potentially serve as a model for how institutions can think about networks to ensure that the institution's own success and how it's thinking about goals and things. Of course, the main thing that's missing here is that the institution first has already done its own research and figured out a strong strategy for why it even wants to be a part of a specific network. So that's kind of before this model here. But overall, the three ideas really a progression where prioritization and being a part of a network comes first, and then adaptation to the network challenges once you're in the network, and then ultimately thinking beyond the network and developing strong partnerships with other institutions. And it's, it is really interesting because when you look at this model, the outcome of it is bilateral partnerships. And so you may think, you're reaching the same point as before you're even part of a network or thinking about network models. But the key thing here is that the access to resources and connections you have with a network is, much more than when you're seeking out individual partnership agreements or bilateral relationships one-on-one. Last slide. And here are the two references that I mentioned. Thank you very much. I look forward to our discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Neupane. We appreciate, and you are in fact connecting. The topic connects to everyone now, considering the COVID-19 global crisis, since we moved to online and everything is digital, and connection and networking is really important. And thank you for your presence and then wonderful presentations. With that, I'd like to move to the next presentations. I'd like to welcome Professor David Adewuyi from Virginia Union University. He brings years of experience as a senior administrator and a scholar in the field. Professor Adewuyi, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, my co-panelists, and especially Dr. Bista for this great opportunity to share my ideas about globalization and internationalization at Virginia Union University. I'm so happy to see Dr. Williams again. We were together here at Virginia Union. Dr. Olusoji Akomolafe is from Nigeria, like myself. We are Yoruba, both of us. From the name, I know where it comes from. We are from the southwest part of Nigeria. And the others I have not met. I think very soon we are going to meet because the world is becoming smaller and smaller. Now, the first three speakers have spoken very insightfully about the problems we encounter about globalization in higher education. Luckily, my own presentation is like an answer, both theoretical and practical solutions to the analyzed problems. So internationalization efforts at VUU have two dimensions. The first dimension is research focused, and it links up very neatly with what Dr. Asia talked about partnerships. Before I came to the US in 1999, there is a network called African Educational Research Network. Again, we have references to that later. This network was established in 1992. That's about 28 years ago. And the membership is drawn from both African and United States higher institutions. For instance, Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria, Kenyatta University from Kenya, University of Botswana, Virginia Union University, North Carolina State University, and Ohio University, just to mention a few. So what the network does is to organize alternate biennial AERN conferences in United States and Africa. For instance, 2006, it was held at Albany State University in Albany, Georgia. That's where I moved to Virginia Union. I was there for 8 years. In 2008, it was held, the conference was held at the University of Botswana in Gaborone. I was there. In 2010, it was held at Kenyatta University in Nairobi. I was there. In 2012, it was held at North Carolina State University in Raleigh. I was there. In 2014, the conference was held at Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria. That's where I finished my first degree. I was there. And in 2016, it was held at Ohio University in Athens. What is very important here is that African Educational Research Network has an online journal called the African Symposium. That is the online journal of AERN, which publishes original research on general education and human development issues about Africa. It is a peer-reviewed and published articles are accepted in American and African universities for promotion and tenure considerations. I was the managing editor of the African Symposium from 2005 to 2016, when the Secretariat moved from VUU to OU, that's Ohio University. We have the Secretariat at Ohio University right now. So that is the research focus, and it is a network of higher institutions, both in Africa and in the US here. The current managing editor is Dr. Emmanuel James Francois, and I will give you details about that after the presentation. Now, the second aspect is the internationalization focus at Virginia Union. One important fact that might let people understand what is going on here is that the leader I worked with at VUU brought me from ASU. He brought me from Georgia to Richmond. So it's like a continuation of what we have been doing together over there, that I was invited to come and establish the Center for International Studies in 2008. 2009. So I benefited a lot from both theoretical and practical aspects of globalization, because I've attended so many conferences organized by NAFSA, so many. I can't waste time on that. So when I came in 2009, it became very, very clear to me what I needed to do to solve the problems which other panelists have discussed. So the center was established in 2010, just a year after I came, and our focus was developing scholars, leaders, and lifelong learners of a global society. So the center was the clearinghouse for students, staff, and faculty foreign travel. If you want to travel, you have to pass through the center, and I have to liaise with other units of the university to ensure that we do not unnecessarily implicate the university about what might happen during any travel. So the center certainly positively impacts students, staff, faculty, and the immediate Richmond community. So this is how I started. Like it has been discussed by other panelists, it's very, very expensive to go abroad. We all know this. And HBCUs are not rich. They don't have the money. The students don't have the money. The parents don't either. The school itself doesn't. So what do? We start from home. So what I did was to organize workshops to internationalize the core curriculum. Those are the courses in the first 2 years in this university. Every summer, I gathered faculty members who are interested. We try to internationalize the curriculum. What that means is simply is to sensitize our students about internationalization or globalization. We start from the textbook you choose for that course, make sure it has at least one chapter about globalization. The questions or the quizzes or the tests must include something about globalization and so on and so forth. So we did that. One outgrowth of internationalizing the core curriculum was what we call the smart classrooms at Virginia Union today. All classrooms are equipped with modern blackboard so that you can project from any part of the world about the course you are teaching. Then another strand is study away, that's within the United States. For instance, I've taken my students to Olusoji African Village in Sheldon, South Carolina many times. We have taken our students to the African Museum in Washington, DC, and so on and so forth. That's within. It's not as expensive as study abroad. The third strand is educational tours. These are faculty-led short visits to other countries around the world. These have been done several times by our faculty. The real big one is study abroad, where students spend one semester or a whole academic session in another higher institution abroad. Many of our students from VU here went to China. They are still there today. Some of them visited other countries and they got scholarships for further studies over there. And some are working there, teaching. I initiated our faculty to look at fellowships that are available. For instance, Fulbright from CIEE, The CIE in particular has taken myself to Spain, to Morocco, to Rio de Janeiro, to Beijing, and so on and so forth. Actually, I've been to all the continents of the world, except the Antarctica, which nobody lives anyway. Then I organized our students and established International Students Association. The membership is for both foreign students and American students. So the name might be confusing, but I call it International Students Association, but it encompasses both foreign and American students. The ISA, they have done a lot in academics, in cultural and social activities on campus and outside of campus, especially during the annual International Education Week. They would organize so many events. They invite other universities to VUU, and they are also invited to other universities to participate in their cultural, academic, and social events. Then Dr. Williams will remember we had the Model United Nations, where our students are encouraged to go either to Washington, DC or New York to represent a country. They will assign them a country and they come back to research what problems that country might encounter. And those students will go back and present as if they are from that country. I think that is a very, very powerful tool of globalization. Lastly, I organize annual passport fairs. Many faculty members, students, staff, and community members, they have obtained their international passports through this effort.
Professor Akomolafe for his remarks. And the topic is making the case for African studies at HBCU. Professor Akomolafe, floor is yours.
I liaised with the local post office, and they will come to campus room Saturday morning from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. Whoever was on the line, even if we close the door at 5 o'clock, they will still complete their application forms and obtain their international passports. This is why I said all the analyzed problems, yes, but my own approach is to tackle those problems head on. And this could never be done without the collaboration and support of the school administration. And in my own case, including the Board of Trustees. So let me stop here, and then during Q&A, we can continue to elaborate on any of these points.
Thank you, Professor David Adewuyi. We appreciate the long history of AERN and lots of internationalization initiative that you have done at Virginia Union University. And also congratulations on your IIEA award for international innovations.
Yeah.
Hard work paid off. Thank you. Now with that.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm very, very grateful, and I look forward to engaging with colleagues. I want to start by saying this. We have a problem. And when I say we have a problem, every time we talk about Africa, whether it is in the context of everyone, we usually revolve around. I wish I could start with the fact that there is no problem when we talk about international education as far as Africa is concerned. Unfortunately, this is not an exception. So these are the things I want to share with your audience. America is a hyphenated country. What I mean by that is that if you're not African American, you're Nigerian American. If you're not Nigerian American, you're Asian American. And sometimes you can even break it down, to ethnicity. Why is that important? Because that also reflects, foreign policy. So I want to talk about area studies today, but in the foreign policy. What does it say? What are the stakes? And it's been written about, and I'm sure many people on this panel would recognize that too. We have an acute underrepresentation of minorities in foreign policy establishment. Surprise, surprise. What they have to do is go through the HBCUs. HBCUs are responsible for the highest number of African Americans. Just look at the number of African students.
Doctor, can I interrupt you for one moment?
Yes.
We are having some technical difficulties. Can you please check your microphone to make sure that you're close?
Okay.
To make sure that nothing is
yeah. Is it better now? Can you hear me?
It is. Yes. Thank you so much.
Okay. Clearly. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. So I said we have two problems. We have the underrepresentation of minorities in the foreign policy establishment. That's not a surprise, because if you go through all the HBCUs in this country, you can barely count, you can count on your on your fingers how many programs we have in African studies, or how many universities have programs in African studies when you talk about HBCUs. Here's the problem. We need to understand the causes and effects of this shortage. And I will try to see if we can provide a foundation for future planning and effective deployment of the resources. I will talk about this down the road. Next slide. The problems begin with the United States government. What do I mean? We have what I call everything African in this country. If you go to the Bureau of African Affairs, it's not too long ago that that bureau was actually, attached to something else. It was not independent. When you talk about African foreign policy, if you go to the Department of State, people who are responsible for making that foreign policy, they don't look like me, they don't look like African Americans, they don't look like minorities. It is not until recently, and when I say recently, I'm talking maybe another 15 or 20 years back, that you just had a handful of African Americans in the Department of State. That's because everything Africa in their foreign policy process is not taken seriously by the United States government. What about the image of Africa? We see this all the time. When you listen to the news on CNN, MSNBC, or any of these major media outlets, when it's time to talk about Africa, it's because there's an Ebola outbreak, or Boko Haram has kidnapped 350-something students or children, or when we talk about poverty. You're not very proud to be an African. You're not very proud to study Africa, and you're not very proud, given what you see in the media, to be associated in any way, shape, or form with Africa. Area studies, by definition, they're very, very expensive. And that's why they're inaccessible to HBCUs. It's not a surprise that most of the best African studies programs, in fact, most of the African studies programs per se, are found in majority institutions. Yale, Johns Hopkins, Columbia, and I can go on and on and on and on and on, Indiana University. They're adding HBCUs. Why? Because most of these colleges and universities cannot afford these programs. You add to that the fact that, can you hear me?
Doctor, we're gonna try one more thing. Thank you everybody for being patient. Can you turn off your cam? And I really don't want to do it, but it may help your signal. Can you just turn off your
Sure.
Camera only? And let's try that. Thank you everybody for being patient.
Okay, how about this?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
That's okay. You can hear me very well now.
Yes, better.
Okay, thank you very much. So I was talking about the affordability that most HBCUs cannot afford to start area studies program,
which is panel discussion. And we have been receiving questions from our guests who have been listening us this afternoon, despite their different time zone. I see many of our colleagues joining us from Asia, Europe, Africa, and other part of the of the globe. So thank you for listening us. I would like to receive questions. Please use Q&A box to ask the question to our panelists. So we'd like to start with our first question to our panel. What do you see is the current challenges for advancing internationalization of U.S. higher education, and now with the COVID-19, and also what the program look like in next few years? We'd like to start with probably, please unmute your microphone so any one of you can chime in or start with. Okay.
Yeah, great. I can start off if I think that one of the the main challenge, of course, the travel restrictions is, it seems like it's definitely going to go on at least until the fall. I mean, on our end, it's going to be a pretty big deal for our student travel and student fellowships abroad. And then I've been thinking also a lot about how, I'd be interested to hear from our other panelists on this, because we had some international students who had to go back home. But what will that mean for, if the restrictions continue on in the future? I think it's really, I've been thinking a lot about this because we've had, it's been challenging as is for all of us, but it'll be really interesting if we can, as administrators, take it on as an opportunity to maybe be more flexible and maybe change this narrative of what internationalization is, as is more of an add-on and not really a priority for a lot of institutions, because it's really seen to be so expensive. But maybe there are parts of it that can be integrated without much expense, and without adding more to the environmental impact and the carbon footprint in terms of flying students around, flying faculty around, flying staff. So here at Yale, we're finding more ways to be more inclusive of our international alumni through webinars and using technology, much as we've done in this for this conference, which is a really good example of just using technology. And I think that, if we take it on as a potential opportunity for the future, then maybe institutions that are currently not prioritizing internationalization could see it as a way to actually have it be a part of an institution's goals and priorities.
Great, thank you. I see the microphone on from Professor David Adewuyi.
Yes. I think where to start is with the administration. And that's what the last speaker called prioritization. If internationalization is prioritized, then they would know how to go about it. But in a situation where it is not prioritized, that is the end of it. From my own experience, for instance, I started with Title III funds, and these are funds from the federal government. So it has nothing to do with whether HBCU is poor or not. but the money from the federal government can be channeled towards study abroad. Again, our students can be taught how to fundraise. I did that here. Any event we have, any football match, anything, they will come to sell whatever they can to make money. They go to their churches to solicit for funding. They go to their friends and family members. We don't need to wait and just be lamenting that we are poor. We have to do something. And that's exactly what I did at VUU. But more importantly, the leadership must buy into it before we can use our own initiatives to assist the students.
Can I just chime in here? Can you guys hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. I want to make an observation. You know, we have to be very careful when we talk about internationalization of U.S. higher education. It's, for me, actually, a misnomer. Because U.S. higher education has been internationalized for over 50 years. I'll explain what I mean by that. Internationalization.
Professor,
international students. You can't hear me anymore? Can you?
Still we're experiencing some challenges. Maybe we can go back to Professor Felecia Williams if she has anything to add on while you are.
Can you guys hear me? You can hear me.
Sure, Dr. Definitely. With regard to the COVID-19, the challenges that we all see, yes, we actually have those same challenges in terms of students being abroad, having to bring those students back, and then international students that were actually at our university. They, of course, couldn't travel home. So yeah, there's definitely some challenges there that we just will have to work through. And looking to the future, it reminds me, it being this whole notion of trying to internationalize through study abroad. It reminds me of when I conducted my initial research as to why students don't study abroad. And I look at the institutional level, and it was very, I see a sort of some symmetry here in that a lot of the data that I was able to gather was around 2004, 2005, which was a few years after September 11th. And I see some of the same here in terms of trying to be able to really promote study abroad as a way to internationalize. I think the biggest difference, though, is after September 11th, 2001, Americans were, the whole notion of fear of travel abroad is being targets. So I think that's the biggest difference in what we're going to see now is that U.S. students studying abroad, they will not necessarily not go because they feel they're targets, because the virus has not targeted one particular nation. And so in terms of trying to overcome that piece, I think that this notion to get students to study abroad will be sort of worldwide, not just, our country like it was right after 2011. So we face challenges.
Dr. Bista, if I may be allowed to just
yes, Professor Akomolafe, yes, we didn't hear you. Maybe I recommend you use that.
Okay, can you hear me a little bit better now?
Yeah, still on it now.
Yes, can you please turn off your video?
Okay, let me do that one more time. Okay,
and as you're speaking, if you're...
Let's try now.
Okay.
And one more thing, sir. If your cell phone is on Wi-Fi and you don't need it for a hotspot, please turn off your Wi-Fi if it's on your network, please. Thank you.
Okay, so with that,
what I was trying to say is that we have to be very careful when we talk about the internationalization of U.S. institutions. They have been internationalized a long time ago. Dr. Adewuyi will remember this. And everywhere across the globe, wherever you are, you will know that students, international students, have been coming to America for the past 50 years. I learned about Harvard University when I was in high school. I wanted to attend Harvard University when I was in high school. People from India, people from Latin America, people from all parts of Asia. It's a two-way street. America does not have a problem of having international students come in here. More international students come to the United States than any other part of the world, including Europe. Where the problem is, and that's what I say, that we have to be careful. This is a two-way street. When we talk about internationalization, we're thinking only about American students going overseas. And here's where there's a problem with that. Because the people who make policies, when they look at that in just a one-dimensional picture, you understand, it's like, oh, sending students abroad. That is just half of the picture. When you engage African countries, when you engage universities from India, from Asia, from any other part of the world, it is two-way street aspect of it now becomes more relevant, not only more relevant, but more vibrant, because those guys come in here and now can influence, because when those board of trustee members, when those administrators, when they see that these are viable institutions, then they may be ready to spend more money.
Sorry, still we are experiencing the, the challenge in hearing you. I think the best alternative is use the dial-in, the number that you receive in your email earlier. Yes, please try using the cell phone, and also continue using your.
Okay, I'll try that.
So we'll wait for you.
I'm so sorry for that.
No problem. Yeah, so we are happy to wait for you. All right, then we move to the next questions for our panelists. The next question here is, how do international faculty and international students help in the process of internationalization at home? And you can speak in the context of HBCU, and other panelists, may bring the PWI experience. Yes, anyone can turn on their microphone to start with.
Please, can you clarify something? What is the reference to home there? Home where? Home I don't understand home. What does home mean in that context?
Most of the time we are focusing on the study abroad program, going out of the country to get, to gain the cross-cultural competencies, international knowledge and experience. But what are we doing without traveling? Or how do we enhance, with the local knowledge?
Okay.
Also connecting with the, the experience, networking that we talked earlier.
Okay.
Yes.
International faculty and international students. Probably where to start is that both international faculty and international students should tell their stories. And that can be engendered by the faculty themselves, by asking relevant questions that will draw in both international faculty and international students to talk about globalization and internationalization. What is different in Nigeria, for instance, from what happens in the US? For me, I've traveled all over the world. What are the things that I found in China that are not here? What are those things that are here that are not available in Nigeria, and so on and so forth? So cross-cultural competencies must be discussed, and people can gain from those discussions. That's my view.
Dr. Neupane, would you like to add, chime in?
I think, yeah, related. I think that, forming networks of students and maybe having more of an integration to the curriculum, I think that could certainly be helpful in terms of how faculty and students can think about internationalization back at, at the university, as opposed to being abroad and, experiencing international activities and things like that.
Sure. Dr. Williams, would you like to chime in?
Sure. I think this sort of cross-cultural knowledge that the international faculty are able to impart upon those folks that are here, I think it's just really, really invaluable. It gets us to, I guess, past that point of xenophobia. We are just very, we tend to be not very in tune to things that are different from us. And so international faculty are able to impart that knowledge upon us. It's just absolutely great. It's great for the students. Some of the programming efforts around that naturally help with that, especially when you talk about resources. If you have the resources to do these things with international faculty as well, things like a language exchange program for students that are actually enrolled in a university, for them to maybe even partner with someone outside of the university in the community, spend time with them, just sort of like a immersion type programs, programs where community members, students, families are able to actually host for weekends some of the international faculty that is learning from both directions. And so there are a wealth of strategies out there for that, and some of that will not be a barrier on the university. Maybe some coordination of resources that's necessary, but when you're asking the community to assist in these efforts, that's less of a financial burden on the institution itself.
Thank you, Professor Williams. I agree, and half of our panelists are also former international student or international faculty member. And as we heard earlier, the number of initiatives, the collaboration they have done in collaboration with, back home or different, universities and institutions, I think that's very powerful. And here at Morgan State University, we have at least 40% of the faculty member are international faculty member. If the university can tap into that potential to connect the students, the international faculty, their projects, and connection with the local students, probably that would be another big initiatives, and that may be one of the things for some other HBCUs to look into existing resources and how we can maximize, connecting or developing cross-cultural competencies, as well as the other areas to look into and expand our horizon, the world views. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Professor David Adewuyi had expanded his the history and the personal journey and the initiative that he had done at 2 different HBCUs. That's amazing. So with that, we'd like to move to the next question that we have for our panel, for this panel discussion. And this is more to look into the opportunities and challenges that we have noticed at HBCUs. So many of us, are currently working at HBCUs, maybe 1 or 2 opportunity or challenges. So let's start with Professor David Adewuyi.
Well, particular opportunities will be, again, if the university authority really wants to do it. I'm saying this because I was Dean of the School of Education in 2018, and I was offered an unsolicited sabbatical leave, and I went away in the fall. By the time I came back in the spring, my Center for International Education was no more. You see that? That's a challenge. So if the university does not prioritize internationalization or globalization, it is not going to happen. I think it's as simple as that.
Thank you. And we're also checking with Professor Olusoji Akomolafe. I think the connection is getting there. Sharon is constantly working on that. And also we most of the time, you know, blame our senior leaders or administrators, dean or provost, or even the president, saying I was experiencing some echoes there. So the other thing probably is we are, you know, everyone has some sort of his or her, you know, blind spot. Maybe as a faculty member, as a research graduate student, undergraduate student, I think it's also our responsibility to talk about the essentials that we need for the university. If we are a part of the international project, if we have some ideas, we should also tell our program head or dean or provost. And also certainly it takes time to bring some changes. And when, you know, now myself being a part of the HBCU heritage and cultural identities, what I like to see now is there are lots of opportunities. It's the matter of how you are exploring. And it may be part of our culture, the way that we have done. Historically, these colleges are there. You know, there may be some challenges, definitely. Historically, that's how they have been doing. But here we can see already exemplary, you know, scenario, the case from Professor Adewuyi, how he did a number of programs. Yes, there is a lot of stories, challenges, but there is also the positive aspect of how you are making changes, you know, in the lives of these, you know, minority and underrepresented students. It's eye-opening moment for many of us, right? And the
Yes.
professor, you know, Felecia Williams, the way she has been working every day, although, you know, she brings a lot of experience. And I was also excited to hear the story of the Professor Olusoji Akomolafe, the way he has been doing at Norfolk State University. So it's a matter of us being curious and also motivate, and also sometimes, you know, touch, you know, to remind the blind spot of our senior administrator. That includes certainly president and provost. Professor Neupane, Dr. Neupane, would you like to add anything that you see in non-HBCU context, or anything particularly you'd like to add on or chime in?
I really do agree with Dr. Adewuyi in terms of, you know, the senior leadership really does need to prioritize internationalization. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. But as I was talking about in my talk, you know, it can happen at all levels, including the middle management, the operational levels as well. And so, yes, you need that directive from the top. And the idea of it being a priority. But the implementation part really comes at the lower levels as well. And so you need the buy-in from all the stakeholders, in addition to, you know, more of a top-down approach as well. So it's definitely a combined approach. I think that's how it can be successful.
Thank you. And the challenges probably are more or less the similar, no matter whether, you know, 2 years institution or 4 year or HBCU.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now I see the Professor Akomolafe back to the screen. Let's check the micro. Oh, okay. Let's try. Your microphone might be mute. I did not know. We did not hear you at all. All right. No, we didn't.
His microphone is muted.
Yes, that was the computer microphone, and he's using his cell phone as well for the audio. Looks like that didn't go through. Maybe we should use the. Let's unmute the computer. Let's try. Professor Akomolafe, would you like to add anything on this particular question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you now. Yes.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Oh, okay, very good. Yes, I mean, number one, I have to really apologize to you guys. I don't know what happened with the audio, but here's one thing I want to add, and this is just to, join everybody else. We talk about this question of organization. International education at HBCUs is a question of money, okay? But that's not the only thing. It's also a question of will. I've been working in an HBCU for 20 years. And I tell you, when we want to find money for something that we like, we usually do, as cash-strapped as we are. Let's face it, it's the inconvenient truth. Even at CUs, and I'm talking now about studies and specifically about African studies, it is not a priority now. It's never been a priority. And I'm not even sure if in the next 10, 15, or even 20 years it's going to be a priority. Last point I want to make. Again, I was saying before, I got cut off, that internationalization is a two-way street. American universities have been internationalized for over 50 years, or maybe even 100 years. There are more international students that come to the United States than any other part of the world. And they come from every facet of the world. It's a two-way street when we talk about internationalization. What we mean by this conversation right now is probably because not enough American students are traveling overseas. But that's just the other half of the equation. Why this is important, is that if we treat internationalization as a two-way street venture, the more Africans you have coming in here, the more Asians that you have coming in here, the more they would actually influence policy. Because the reason why we're talking about international students, especially after 9/11, is because we have them here. Let us face it. Let us put our money where our mouth is. And we're going to do great.
Thank you.
Really, really
great. I know we are also closely monitoring some of our chat room and the questions now. I think it's the time for, take the questions that we have received many questions, in fact, from our guests who have been watching us, listening us this afternoon. So Sharon, can we take the first couple of questions to get going? Let's take the first question.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. If everybody could draw their attention to the Zoom webinar chat. The first question comes from a student. It says, as an HBCU graduate and Fulbright, how have you all operationally set up methods to attract underrepresented students to international experiences at your HBCUs? Have faculty, SIOs played a key role in driving students to pursue international experiences, or has collaboration occurred primarily with external initiatives specifically geared toward HBCUs, or a combination of both? Panelists, please unmute your mics and chime in. Thank you.
Okay, can I jump in here?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. From my own experience, what I did was to employ our faculty members and students who had the opportunity to travel abroad to be the ambassadors for us. So those students will go from class to talk with their friends about their experience abroad. The same thing with the faculty members who took students abroad. When they come back, they talk in their classes about the wonderful experience they had. So that is one way to draw them in. But the question comes when it comes to money. Many students think it is impossible for them to travel abroad without money. But like I said, once they prepare their minds to travel, it is possible. But you don't wake up in January this year and say you are going to Europe in June or May of the same year. You have to prepare, just like I said. You can fundraise, and if there is any money attached to the program in that university, then you can draw from that. And in any case, the financial aid is there as well. My students have gained some money from financial aid to travel abroad. We have money from other third-party providers like CIEE, IIE, educational tours, and so on and so forth. What they do is to subsidize travel abroad. So the first thing is to disabuse the minds of our students about the possibility or the impossibility of traveling abroad. If they want to go, they can go.
Okay.
Let me
Like
chime
to
in
chime
very
in
quickly,
here
Dr.
and talk a little bit about.
Oh, sorry, Dr. Williams, please go ahead.
Are you sure? You can go ahead.
No, please.
Okay, I just want to talk a little bit about the research that may address some of this. When I took a look at who studies abroad, why people don't study abroad, I was able to compare all undergrad, well, all college students versus minority college students. And the minority college students, I had to collapse the variable because there was not enough information on each racial group. So I just collapsed it to minority, non-minority. And in terms of perception, the greatest factors were lack of information that we're going to call awareness, cost, constrained curricula, family reluctance, health, safety, and security reasons. Those were the top 5 identified by study abroad offices. And that was for all graduates. Now, of the 5, the perceived one that was the biggest obstacle was actually cost, whereas awareness or lack of information was next for all. But when you looked at the minority group, the biggest one was cost, but even more so than was for the non-minority group. The next biggest one is family reluctance. Quite a bit more for minorities versus non-minorities. And peer pressure was not a factor, or perceived to be a factor, I should say, for the majority group, but it was for minorities by quite a bit much. Yeah, that I think that in terms of efforts to address how we approach and promote study abroad, those would be some areas that we could look at. In addition to the lack of foreign language competence was not as big of an issue for the majority, but it was a big issue for minority, as well as sort of a general apathy about study abroad. That was pretty big for minorities, because they're against, if we're dealing with people that are first generation college students, they're really more concerned about getting education, and they do see study abroad or international education as an add-on as opposed to a critical part of the college experience.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask, I wanted to add very, very quickly. Thank you very much for that question. And you were right. Yes, it's a combination of both. But since you're a student now, because
we're losing you. We're losing you.
Sorry?
Yeah, we are losing your audio. So
Okay. Yeah, because, you know, especially when it comes to African American students, study abroad is not a field of dreams thing. It's not like if you build it, they will come.
If you are close to your microphone, probably, you know.
Yeah, actually, I'm right in front of the microphone right now.
Okay, then.
Going on. I'm like 2 inches away from the microphone. So maybe because I'm in the basement, maybe that's the problem. But if you guys can hear me at all, then I just...
Yeah, it's hard to hear from you.
I know, and I'm so sorry for
the... No worries.
I'm so sorry.
Sharon, can we take next question? I know we are also mindful of the time. It's
yes.
a lot of questions. Let's read the, can you go with the second question?
Okay, if you look over to your Zoom webinar chat, question 2, what is the ideal proportion between the internationalization of the staff and the students study abroad? And that could also be for virtual as well.
And I also like to remind the panelists that you can directly answer any of the questions by, you know, typing your responses. Please feel free to type, you know, select the question and type your response directly so that, you know, some of the question can be answered. So that may be the you know, that may be something Professor Akomolafe you like to do, and all panelists, I like to request you to use the keyboard and then reply this question directly from your computers. All right, so the question, yes, Sharon, you have a question, so I'd like to request my panelists to respond. Okay. Anyone wants to chime in?
Sure, I'll chime in with just some research here, because I did make the point that the one of the most significant actions was to actually have a good number of study abroad staff. But to get to that finding, I actually ran a regression analysis. And what we basically came up with is that for every unit increase in the proportion of staff and student workers, the proportion of the undergraduate student population studying abroad actually increased by half. So just in numbers, for every unit increase in the proportion, there would be a half a student increase in the number studying abroad, or that would be an increase of 1 student studying abroad per 2,000 students. We're dealing with a really, really small sample when we actually did this, but for every worker that you'd add, you would actually get an additional person studying abroad per 2,000 students, which sounds pretty small, but I think that effort to start that effort. So we're saying that we need bodies. We need bodies to go out and recruit. We need bodies to promote. And the promotion does, it could be a combination of sort of the canvassing that you do for political campaigns, sort of on the street, knocking on doors of the dorms. But in this age of technology, I think aggressive Instagram, Facebook campaigns, but I guess for our students, probably the Instagram is probably going to garner more, a little bit more interest than say the Facebook.
Thank you, Professor Williams. Let me ask this, you know, time in to Dr. David Adewuyi. He has done a lot of work. So what do you think the proportion of the faculty or the resources for internationalization?
Well, one of the strands of what I did here is what I discussed about giving workshops every summer to internationalize the curriculum. So any course that is internationalized is an avenue for that professor to discuss internationalization in that course to the students. So they're sensitized that life does not start and end in the United States alone. There are other countries of the world that you can visit to enrich your college experience. The most important thing is to alleviate their fears, like Dr. Williams alluded to. Here at Virginia Union, we have the financial aid, Another way to encourage them is to go for at least one semester where they can take 3 or 4 courses and repatriate the credits back to the university. The way to do that is to start from the registrar's office. The registrar must know the course that is going to be offered, the equivalencies of the course from here and the course the students are going to take where they are going. So that's another way to entice them, that they are not just going to look at things. They are going to study and they are going to repatriate the credits. And that might even shorten their stay in the university, because this study abroad always happens during the holidays in the summer. So if they can spend 4 or 5 weeks abroad and they can bring it back 12 or 15 credit units, that's a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much, David. Appreciate that. We have been experiencing some challenges with the chat room, so please ignore that. And Sharon has, written all the questions, so we'll get back to you with your questions. So we are almost toward the end of this session, so we'll not take any further questions now, but we'll be getting back to you via emails. We noticed some of the, the hackers already entering in our system. I'd like to, at this moment, recognize my colleagues who have worked very hard to put together for a grant and for the International Education Task Force. We appreciate their help and support. And then this moment, we have also listening my Assistant Vice President, Dr. Jakob Esteke, and we have remarks from him on behalf of the Morgan State University. We would like to thank all our panelists, guest students from all over the globe who have been listening us this afternoon. We hope to collaborate and continue to share innovative solutions to increase our institutional global footprints, student cross-cultural learning outcomes, and professional growth. And also, I'd like to take a second to appreciate the greater support that we have received from President David Wilson, the president of Morgan State University. He's a great, fearless leader to expand the international program at Morgan University. And also at this moment, I'd like to recognize our supporters: Morgan State University, Open Journals in Education, Journal of International Students, American International Recruitment Council, Network for Research into Chinese Education Mobilities, Star Scholars Network. The president of the Star Scholars Network is also in the audience listening to us. And also the World Council on Intercultural and Global Competence, and for technical support, University of Louisiana Monroe. With that, here is our contact information. And at this moment, I again like to appreciate the greater support and for also accepting our invitations from our panelists, Professor Olusoji Akomolafe, Professor Felecia Williams, Dr. Asia Neupane, and Dr. David Adewuyi. Thank you so much. And also for our colleagues who have been listening us all over the world, we appreciate it. Thank you so much. We may stay a couple of minutes for other discussion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Bye.
Can we do the group photos, Dr. Bista, if possible?
Yes, if anybody is still available, if you can hold for one moment, we wanted to do a virtual